So your race leader, Jan Lewandowski, in the number 2 machine with Marco Corti. He's currently working, trying to maintain that second position. He's got Stuart Adcock right with him, however. And then in the 4th position, you have Michael R. Cook in the number 4 car, and Christian Manzini. He is rounding out your top 5. But these top 5 drivers still very close on the racetrack, separated by less than 2 seconds. They come now into the final corner to complete lap number 1. Stuart Adcock doing a great job there, trying to put that pressure on Marco Corti as they come down past the start-finish line for the first time. Lewandowski, however, he's got himself a traditional early race lead, and he's up to 1.4 seconds, the gap between himself and Corti in that number 3 machine. And then further back, there's great battle going on. The 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th position. And see that everyone moving down to the inside lines to come in to Druids, and Martin Asher, he has now managed to make up the 7th position. 2 as they come through there, but it looks as though David Fuller, he is going to have a good run as they come out of that corner, and it looks like he managed to just maintain that 7th position for the time being. But all the way through the field, everyone back from Michael Cook all the way through to Martin Goffman, who's currently sat in the 9th position at the moment. They are all really close on the racetrack. And then behind you have Robert Drabowski. He's currently in no man's land at the minute. Jose Maria Senzolmo, after a good couple of races, currently sat down in the 11th position under a little bit of pressure from Magnus Ring, as we're currently working lap 2 of 30 here at Rantac in the iRacing Skip Barber Premier Series. And I tell you what though, Lewandowski is charging. He knows that he needs to get as big a gap as possible earlier on. That gap is currently stood at 1.5 seconds. I'm currently looking at the number 12 machine of David Shepherd, right in the middle of that battle. You can see there, David Farr has managed to overtake him, and that was so close there, just losing the position to Martin Asher in what is a battle for the 7th position. So as they come across the start-finish line, Lewandowski, he is still your race leader. The gap between himself now and Marco Corti, as they come across the line, is up to 1.9 seconds, as Marco Corti under severe pressure from Stuart Adcock in the number 1 machine as they came through the Paddock Hill bend there. It looks as though Adcock just had to get off the throttle a little bit earlier, and that forced him to not be able to make the opportunity as they came back down into Druids. And then it looks as though Manzini and Cook have broken away, but David Ford and Martin Asher still in a great battle on the racetrack. David Shepherd, he spins, just managing to avoid everyone else as he came off the racetrack. That was the Green Hill bend there, as he's just trying to put the power down on exit, spinning it again, coming right into the way of other cars, and getting T-boned by, I believe that is Antti Rassi there, and Antti Rassi nothing more than a passenger, as it looks as though David Shepherd is just trying to get himself back on the racetrack, and both those 2 drivers are out of the race. We'll try and get ourselves a replay of that in just a couple of moments' time, but Jan Lewandowski is still your race leader in that number 2 machine, dropping Marco Corti currently at a rate of about 0.3 of a second a lap. As you see that Antti Rassi is now going to be classified as out of the race. David Shepherd, he is sat down in pit lane trying to get that. So you saw that live there. David Shepherd, his race is pretty much over, as is Antti Rassi. Now, meanwhile, Lewandowski coming back down into turn number 1, working lap number 4 on 30 here. The gap between himself and Marco Corti now up to 2.4 seconds. Adcock in the number 1 machine, charging down, still putting the pressure on Marco Corti, with Michael Cook in 4th, and then Christian Manzini rounding out your top 5. Just for the moment, having a look at Martin Asher and David Fuhr on the racetrack, it looks as though the Asher is just giving Fuhr a little bit of breathing space at the moment. This is a long race, in fact one of the longest races of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, and he's got to be careful that he don't make too many big maneuvers early on, because this track is so narrow and you really do get squirty if you go offline here. So Asher doing a good job of dropping back to about 5 car lengths behind David Ford in the battle for the 6th position. So, Joanowski's your race leader, Stuart Adcock, really close there to Marco Corti as they're coming into that twisty section of the racetrack towards the end of the lap. And it looks as though Adcock is very good through the section, but as they come down to the start-finish line, Corti can get a good drive off the final corner as they come underneath the Adfan Bridge now into the final couple of corners here through Surtees, and then just here, it looks like Adcock really does get a good run, but can't close down to Marco Corti as much as he really needs to be able to make that move into Paddock Hill Bend. As you see, he's trying a different line there, trying to use the outside down, but he's diving down the inside. And this time, Adcock getting so close, but losing momentum out of the corner, and that is compromising his run down to Druids. If he just holds it back for, half a quarter of the race at the moment, as well as Antti Rassi and Luca Zanetti. So we have 3 retirements, 13 cars currently sat on the lead lap with Wolfgang Waldenholt in the number 15 machine. Currently, the last driver on the lead lap with a little bit of damage is ahead of him. Smoke a little bit as Simon Dijuni is also going slowly. A little bit of damage to that number 11 machine. But further through the field, you have still got a great battle now between Robert Jakubowski and Martin Glossman. That is the battle for what is now 8th position on the racetrack. Glossman and Jakubowski doing a good job there, in pretty close contention, but they have fallen back from Martin Asher and David Fior. What is the battle for the 6th position even. So hello again everyone, those of you just joining are completing lap 5 of 30 in the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series on Glacier TV. Wilmington, your commentator for tonight, and the story of the day so far is the charge that Jan Ranowski in the number 2 machine is making as Marco Corti is continuing to be hounded by Stuart Adcock. Adcock gets a good fight off turn number 1 there, but it's still not close enough to make the move into Drury to get such good braking. Doesn't get close enough to make a dive down the inside there to try and set himself up as they come into the Graham Hill Bend. And that is costing him pretty dearly. But of course, we have still got ourselves 25 laps to go here at Brands Hatch. This 2.3 mile, 9 corner racetrack, which is oh so fast, some very long straightaways and sweeping corners, and also a couple of tight twisty sections to begin the lap. But Adcock looking to try and get that draft now on Marco Corti in the battle for the 2nd position. And what this will allow for Michael Cook to just be hanging back there in 4th spot at the moment, but he's right with this 2nd, 3rd place battle. So, at the moment, they are just coming their way just through the Westfield Bend, down into Dingledale Corner, and it really does look as though every time Corti's having to defend, not only is he losing time to Jan Ranowski, but he's allowing Cook to keep closing that gap. And also, Christian Manzini is also coming back into the picture. So, a little bit of a tree train now, led by Marco Corti, as you see, Stuart Adcock trying to put that pressure on. Out of the last corner, is he going to try and make a move down into Paddock Hill Bend once again? We'll see as they come down past the start finish line. Adcock trying variety lines again, trying to look down to the inside. It looks like he's going to get a good run this time off the corner and try and set him up for Druid. Can he get close enough off the corner? He's looking down to the right hand side, 2 laps to go in, and Adcock just having the back off the throttle there, and that allowed Marco Corti to last just another couple of corners, but that pressure keeps on coming on from that number 1 machine, Stuart Adcock. He is putting all kinds of pressure on Marco Corti in the battle for position number 2, but that field is just backing up behind him with Cook and Mantini right there. The 2nd through 5th on the racetrack now are separated by less than 3 seconds, and this really is allowing Joanowski to just disappear out in the race lead. So, out front, as I say, that number 2 machine, Jan Joanowski, is your race leader by almost 5 seconds now. Further back, David Fior and Martin Asher in the battle for the 6th position. They are continuing their scrap. Asher still not putting too much of a challenge on David Fior in that number 7 machine. Martin Glossman and Robert Jakubowski, they are still having their battle for 8th and ninth position on the racetrack. Jose Maria says Olmo is still a no man's land in that number 10 car, currently 23 seconds behind the race lead, but 5 seconds pretty much separates him from 9th and the 11th position, so really just riding by himself, trying to make up time where he can. So currently working lap number 8 of 30 here at Brands Hatch. That gap is now over 5 seconds between the race leader and Marco Corti. Adcock is set in the 3rd position. Cook seems to not be able to get closer to 2 or 3 tenths. I'm not sure whether this is by design, whether he really is doing everything possible to try and maintain that gap to the 2nd and 3rd place drivers. Mancini though is looking as though he is getting closer to Michael Cook in the battle for the 4th place in the racetrack, but this four-way battle really still going well, as they are less than 1/3 still all the way into this race. This top 5 drivers, we know that Lewandowski does sometimes slow down after about 10-15 laps at most of these races, so he might start falling back into the clutches of the likes of Corti, Adcock, Cook and Mancini. We're going to have to wait and see, but for the moment that number 2 machine really is in a class of its own, driving away from the pole position into the sunset, pretty much everything he would have wanted to do. So coming out final corner to complete lap number 8 for that number 2 machine of Jan Lewandowski to run through your running order then with 8 laps now scored complete. Your race leader Jan Lewandowski, the gap between himself and 2nd position as they come across the line is now up to 5.4 seconds to Marco Corti. Stuart Adcock currently sat in the 3rd position, still putting pressure on Marco Corti. Michael Cook even is currently sat in the 4th spot, Christian Mancini in 5th, David Fuhr in 6th, Martin Asher 7th, Robert J is in 8th, Martin Osman in 9th, Jose Maria says Olmo in 10th, with Simon De June, Magnus Ring, Wolfgang Wildenhaar rounding out the cars on the lead lap. Still 13 cars on the lead lap with David Shepherd, Antti Ray and Luca Zanetti, the cars currently classified as retired. Just having a look at this battle between Adcock and Corti, really does seem that Adcock is losing it on corner exit, not really being able to give him the advantage. It's down through these straightaways to try and set up a pass. It's almost like he's having to make some big lunges into the corners where it does look as though he is better on the brakes in order to try and really get the job done. Not being able to do it successfully. Had some good opportunities though. We've seen a good number of times down into Paddock Hill Bend. Corti just literally dives that car down the inside, but finding it difficult to make it stick, and therefore losing drive off the corner. But we'll keep an eye on that as 2nd through 4th, so 2nd through 5th is still separated by less than 2 seconds on the racetrack. So Corti, Adcock, Cook and Mancini, 2nd through 5th, are doing a sterling job in their battle there, and that is by far the biggest battle on the racetrack, as Asher has dropped back now behind David Fuhr. In fact, he's starting to come into the clutches of Robert Japorinsky and Martin Grossman. Robert J is currently sat in the 8th position, really close battle between himself and Grossman in that battle for the 8th position. And Robert J, it does look as though he is fast at the start of the lap, but Martin Asher, I believe that he had just a minor spin on lap number 8, which caused him to lose a little bit of time. So he's dropped back, out of contention, and in fact he did coming out of Graham Hill Bend, losing it as we saw earlier on with David Shepherd in that number 12 machine. But I tell you what, class in the field still at the moment, with 10 laps going to be scored complete at the line. Jan Lewandowski in that number 2 car doing a great job out there, and we're currently looking at Stuart Adcock just to see how he's putting that pressure on Marco Corti. We're going to stay there for just one moment. So as they come once again under the Advan Bridge, it's gonna be, I think, for Adcock, if he's gonna try and make that pass, they just come through clearway to Clark down onto the Barber straightaway. It's gonna have to be Paddock Hill Bend if he's gonna make a move, because it doesn't look as though he can get a good run off the Paddock Hill Bend to then make that move down into Druids. As again, he's trying different lines out on Marco Corti, just clipping the curve a little bit there. We know that's not the best thing to do, running it out wide and corner exit, but still not close enough to Corti as they come into Druids. Gets closer and closer in the middle of the corner though, and then as they come down into Graham Hill Bend, it just looks as though he's not getting the run for this middle part of the lap either. As they come down the Cooper straightaway now into Surtees, and yeah, it looks as though it's going to have to be turn one as he's getting close to breaking, but these long straightaways will just allow Corti to get right back with him. However, Michael Cook and Christian Mancini, they have once again dropped back about 2 seconds behind these two in the battle for the second and third position, and it does look as though every time Corti doesn't have to defend, he can pull away with Adcock from 4th and 5th positions on the racetrack. So, with 11 laps going to be scored complete at the line, your race leader, as it has been for the past 11 laps, the number 2 machine by Jan Noranowski, who is doing a great job there, as you see, in that brown and orange car, driving some of his club Central Eastern Europe, coming down across the start-finish line, down into the Paddock Hill Bend, as we are currently looking at the number 6 machine, I believe, of Christian Mancini, who was stuck behind Michael Cook. Looks as though when Cook was closing on Adcock and Corti, that Mancini was a little bit fast. He's trying down the inside into Druids, so that's not going to work. They touched just a little bit. Both drivers able to survive out of that one, but Mancini getting very, very close to Cook as they come back now into the Graham Hill Bend, down the Cooper straightaway into Surtees, and it looks as though he's on a mission to see ahead of him. I believe that is Corti and Adcock trying to go too wide there, as yeah, Corti just went a little bit wide, and that allowed Adcock to stick his nose down the inside, but again, not got the drive in the middle of the corner, and that still allows Corti to dodge bullet after bullet. And the gap now in 3rd position and 4th to Adcock, back to Michael Cook. That has increased almost 4 seconds in the last 3 laps alone. So it really does show when Adcock and Corti aren't dueling it out, then Cook and Mancini just cannot keep up with these two. However, that gap between Corti and Noranowski is something of interest in itself. Corti's last lap was a 1 minute 40.496, Noranowski 1 minute 40.202. So Noranowski only putting out 2 tenths of a second on that last lap. So he came across the line at a 1 minute 40.161 to Noranowski. We saw Corti having to defend from Adcock, and that meant that he was a little bit slow. In fact, I believe he was 6 tenths of a second slower that last lap. And every time Corti's defending from Adcock, Adcock going slowly there. Adcock going slowly, sliding it through Paddock Hill Bend, and that has allowed Marco Corti a bit of breathing space. Adcock is keeping it going, but his tyres, he's going to have to let him cool down for a little bit, and he's moving right back into the clutches of Michael Cook and David Fern. So David Fern also got back a little bit. I believe he might have done the same thing down into Paddock Hill Bend, losing just a little bit of time. So a gap now between Noranowski and Michael Corti. Jan Noranowski in the number 2 machine, Marco Corti in the number 3. That is now up to 7.1 seconds. This is going to be an interesting test though for Marco Corti. Can he, now that he's not got through Adcock really hounding him down, use this opportunity to try and close down that number 2 machine? As we've seen that, you know, in the middle stage of this race, Marco Corti's been oh so good so often in this iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, and if he can start piling that pressure on, that gap could start decreasing as we see Nowinowski come across the line to put 13 laps in the book now, as we're currently looking at Stuart Adcock on his charge to recovery. Adcock has fallen a good 4 seconds now behind Marco Corti in that battle for the second position as they come across the line. And yeah, 4 seconds to gap between these two drivers pretty much, as again Adcock tied all over the place. He's going to have to really struggle to keep it on the racetrack, and that really is going to allow us to come down into Druids there. Cook down the inside. Adcock trying to defend the position, waited too late and almost ran into the side of Cook there, but Adcock having two very bad laps, and that is going to be very, very heartbreaking there for Adcock, as he's now lost third position from Michael Cook, and this is going to really give Corti the breathing space he's been looking for, because even though Adcock has a very fast driver and is able to stick with Corti for the first 10 or so laps of this race, now he's got to get himself past to Adcock, and we've talked about how unstable his car seems to be in the middle and exit of the corners. A chance like Brands Hatch, you really do need to drive that. So last lap by Marco Corti actually only did a 1 minute 41.296, whereas Jan Nowinowski did a 1 minute 40.517. The gap between the top two drivers now is pretty much 8 seconds, with Stuart Adcock relegated into the fourth position as he got passed by Michael Cook on that previous lap. So your top five: Jan Nowinowski, Marco Corti, Michael Cook, Stuart Adcock and David Thorpe. Christian Mancini currently sat in the sixth position, Martin Asher in seventh, Robert Jakubatsky in eighth, Martin Klossman in ninth, and Jose Maria says, "Oh, we're running out your top 10. And we talked about Robert Jakubatsky earlier on in that number 9 machine, and he has broken away from Martin Klossman, but that number 9 car is about 3 seconds behind Martin Asher in the battle for the second position, who in turn really has fallen off the rear of Christian Mancini now. Stuart Adcock piling the pressure on Michael Cook. Going back to Marco Corti momentarily, his last lap, 1 minute 40.549. Nowinowski did a 1 minute 40.673. So Corti starting to close the gap, but literally it was only 1/10 of a second that last time by, and we really need more than that, as we're going to be coming across the start finish line this time by with half the lap score complete. Half a second a lap if he's going to close down number 2 machine. And we've seen so far in this series how hard that 2 car of Nowinowski is to pass. So Corti really is going to have to get his head down for the next 5-6 laps or so. He's going to try and make a challenge for that top position. So as we come past our finish line, half laps are now in the book at Brands Hatch, with Nisolowski as your race leader, Marco Corti in second, Michael Cook in third, Stuart Adcock in fourth, and David Farr in fifth. And just in a moment, we're going to take a moment to go through the sights and sounds of Brands Hatch. Stuart Adcock still putting the pressure on Michael Cook there in the battle for the third position. These two drivers are now 7 seconds behind Marco Corti in the second position. They can see him just in the distance, but they're nowhere near close enough to really make any form of an impact. And this is going to be a huge disappointment for that number 1 machine, Stuart Adcock. As he came into this race, you thought he had a chance to at least get himself into the top 2 drivers, qualified in 3rd, and was one of the only 3 drivers who set qualifying time of a 1 minute 39, or sorry, a sub 1 minute 40. So Adcock, Courtney and Nowinowski really were the class of the field coming into this race, but Stuart Adcock still sat behind Michael Cook in that battle for 3rd position at the moment, and that really is not where he wants to be as we're into the second half of this race. Tell you what, Marco Coulter is still dropping back. Last time by, Nisolowski did a 1 minute 40.064. Really building up speed now is Nisolowski in that number 2 machine, trying to pull further away from Marco Coulter in that number 3 car. He knows now that Coulter is probably in clean air. He also knows the fact that when Coulter is in clean air, he can be someone who's really fast, just hot lapping. And Nisolowski really is putting that pressure back onto Coulter now to say, look, this is my race, I'm dominating here today, and that gap is now up to over 8.5 seconds as Adcock continues to apply that pressure on Michael Cook. A little bit further back, it looks as though for the moment that battle between David Farrar and Christian Mancini in the battle for the 5th position has calmed down. The gap between those 2 drivers is now 1.2 seconds. Looking further back through the field, Martin Asher currently scored 26 seconds behind the race leader. Martin Asher, he qualified this race in the 8th position, so he has made up 1 position from the start. Robert Jakuski, he started in 10th, and he's made up 2 positions from this race start. Martin Grossman is pretty much started where he currently is where he started, and Jose Maria Saez Olmo is only made up 1 place as well. So these drivers, pretty much is a case of they are where they started, with drivers not really being able to make huge charges through the field. In fact, if I have a look back, I think that the biggest mover is actually David. No, there's only people like David Furr only moving up 1 or 2 positions. No real charges in this race. Our best battle on the racetrack, however, is still that of Michael Cook and Stuart Adcock in the battle for the 3rd position. Down to the inside there, tries Stuart Adcock, and that lost him momentum as they came through 30s. Adcock's looking very racy now. He's decided that it is go time for him, as we're currently working lap number 18 or 30, round 6 of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, and Adcock now looking to the outside. That is not a place where you really want to try and make a move, but is he going to try to cut over? Yes, he is, as they come down into the Westfield bend, and it looks like Adcock has just timed that beautifully. He has managed to move himself back up into the 3rd position. Beautiful overtaking manoeuvre there by Adcock as he regains that 3rd spot he lost to Michael Cook about 5 laps ago. And that was one really impressive manoeuvre there by the number 1 machine. Running a little bit wide as they went through Hawthorne Bend, turn number 5, to just then get the perfect undercut as they came to turn 6, the Westfield Bend, into Dingle Dell and the Dingle Down corner. So this is going to allow Stuart Adcock to potentially start pulling away. Let's not take anything away from Michael Cook, however. He's been a very stout competitor here today. In fact, he's running a little bit wide there through Paddock Hill Bend. That is going to drop him back a couple of tenths and give Adcock a little bit more breathing room. Marco Corti, that gap between himself and Daniel Nisolowski even, right, is stabilised at about 8.5 seconds. Nisolowski's last lap was a 1 minute 40.496. Marco Corti's a 1 minute 40.495. So within 1/1000th of a second, these drivers currently lapping on the racetrack. Adcock moving himself back up in 3rd. Michael Cook is in 4th. But Mancini, this is probably your best battle on the racetrack at the moment now. Mancini and David Farr in the battle for the 5th position. So So for Chris Mancini currently sat in that 6th position. Sorry about that. David Ford is being his target for pretty much this entire race. The first 4 or 5 laps, you know, these drivers were really able to stick with the lead pack, but they faded now to 20 odd seconds behind the race leaders, but still having a great battle on track for his 5th and 6th positions on the racetrack. They pulled themselves out a 5-second cushion to Martin Atta, who's currently sat in the 7th position in that number 8 machine, and Robert Jakubowski, who's currently sat in the 8th spot in that number 9 Mazda, is really trying to gain a little bit of an advantage. He's coming under pressure now from Martin Glossman in the battle for that 8th position. So currently working lap number 20 of 30 here at Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch is a track steeped in history, set in Kent in England, about 15 miles outside of London to the east. This track is played home to Formula 1, played home to sports cars and so many forms of motor racing, including entry-level single series open wheel cars, as these Skip Barbers are in England. The comparisons are probably the Formula 4 2000s. The Skip Barbers we're racing in today, I have to say that Nisolowski is the class of the field currently in that number 2 machine. He has pulled out that gap in the first 20 laps of this race to 8.4 seconds over Michael Corti, who's currently sat in the 2nd position. To Adcock, he is currently riding in 3rd. Michael Cook is in 4th, and David Thor rounding out your top 5. So it looks since Adcock's been able to get himself past Michael Cook, in the last 2 to 3 laps he's pulled out a gap of 2.5 seconds. So that's the equivalent of about 1.5 seconds a lap almost. He's pulling out over Michael Cook in that number 4 machine, as Adcock is not likely going to be able to get himself back up to the rear of Marco Corti, who is sat patiently waiting for Corti to make a mistake for the first 10 or so laps of this race. As we're currently looking at the number 10 machine of Marcus Klosterman, who's closed that gap up to Robert Jakubowski in the number 9 machine. Adcock is pulled away though, not going to get close enough to Corti, but I think he's just trying to gap himself a little bit in case he makes a mistake later on in this race, as we have got ourselves less than 10 laps to go here at Brands Hatch. And Glossman, he's doing a good job trying to get himself up to the rear of that number 9 machine. Last time by, Glossman did a 1 minute 41.462. Jakubowski ahead of him did a 1 minute 41.501. So didn't gain much that last lap. Having a look back at their previous lap times, however, they really are literally been 2 tenths of a second on most laps. So these two drivers have been going at it. Glossman, however, has closed that gap over the past 5 or 6 laps to the point that he can start feeling the draft of Jakubowski. And on these long straightaways, even though these cars, you know, haven't got that much horsepower, they really can make use of the draft effect if they can set their car up to do so. So if they come across the line now, Martin Glossman currently riding in the 9th position. He has closed the gap, literally barely, if anything at all, but he really does close into Paddock Hill Bend. Last time by, he actually gained 6 tenths of a second, but that is really the draft kicking in more than anything else. He's trying to dive down the entire trajectory. He's too far back to be able to make any form of gains there, but Glossman is smelling blood there, trying to get himself up into the 8th position. So your top 5 currently, Niezolowski is your race leader, with Marco Corti in 2nd, Stuart Adcock in 3rd, Michael Cook in 4th, Christian Mancini in 5th. We are looking for the moment at that battle between Glossman and Jakubowski in the battle for the 8th position. However, ahead of them, David Farr has caught up to the rear of Christian Mancini once again. These two drivers also separated by less than a second on the racetrack, and David Farr, now into the last third of this race, is starting to put that pressure on. As you see, we're riding with him now in that number 7 machine, that beautiful dark black Mazda, and I think the number 7 car has got a good opportunity to try and close down that yellow and black number 6 machine of Christian Mancini, as we've still got ourselves a good 7 laps to go here at Brands Hatch. Marco Corti still losing time to that number 2 machine of Jan Niezolowski. That gap is now up to 9 seconds. So for the moment, Niezolowski really is still your dominant driver in this round 6 of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series on Glacier TV. Round 6 of 12 here. And let's not forget, these drivers do have 2 drop weeks, but Niezolowski really trying to assert his dominance here today, and it's going to be a case of just how many points can he gain, as we're going to say hello to a certain Mr. Yoni Backman.
Howdy everyone. Late just came back from work, sorry for the late working hours, but can't help it.
So your top 5 at the moment, Jan Niezolowski with Marco Corti in 2nd, Stuart Adcock in 3rd, Michael Cook in 4th, and Christian Mancini rounding out your top 5. But that battle between Mancini and David Farr is continuing on the racetrack, as Farr trying his best to get to the rear of Christian Mancini in that number 6 machine, keeping an eye also in that battle between Glossman and Jakubowski. And Glossman is very good on the first part of this lap, but looks as though he loses out a little bit in that 2nd or 3rd sector, but he's closed a little bit there, as he's now going to come down underneath that Advan bridge into clearways, and then obviously you've just got the Clark curve to complete this lap. Glossman is looking a lot closer. If he can get a good run through Paddock Hill Bend this time by, he might be able to make himself a move, as he's moving to the high side, trying to see if he can do what Adcock did to Cook earlier, by just running a wide line and doing that famous carpenter. But he's just looking a little bit too early, Yoni, and I think that's what's losing him that momentum in that first part of the lap.
Yeah, could well be. At the same time, with that battle, we have a P10 battle going on between Jose Maria Saiz Olmo and Simon Van Dugin for 10th position. Those guys went too wide the last 3 corners.
Yeah, so for Jose Maria Olmo, after pretty much riding by oneself for the most part of this race, now coming under pressure to stay in the top 10 in this race. As down to the inside goes Simon Dejun. Easy pass by him, but will Jose Maria Olmo try and make the move back down into Druids? This is the perfect crossover point, and looking down to the inside, but the next corner, that is going to benefit Simon Dejun in that number 11 machine. 2 wides that come out of Druids down into the Graham Hill Bend, turn number 3, and it looks as though Simon Dejun's going to be able to do it, and still the crossover again there by Jose Maria Olmo, as now they come in to Surtees, turn number 4, and if Jose Maria Olmo can get it done there, he spins it, losing it as he's on the apex of that corner. He's got no one really behind him, so he can just chuck it back into gear and coast away. But great racing between these two, but Jose Maria Olmo unfortunately losing out.
Yeah, he did actually the same maneuver last time by, but this time he was not so fortunate. Just sent the rear slightly too much, and good battle, but that seems to be over with.
Yeah, and that is unfortunate for Jose Maria Olmo, because he's had some strong races in this iRacing. Vince again trying to
or that he has just superheated tires.
I was going to say that, and he's now lost himself 11th position as well, so he's relegated to the last car on the lead lap behind now Marcus Ring. And with that spin in a fast corner like Surtees, he really probably just has overheated his tyres, and I don't think that straightaway between turn 4 and 5 was long enough to cool his tyres down. He's going to have to take it easy for the rest of this lap.
Yeah, meanwhile battling for 7th place, Robert and Martin. Robert gained 3/10 of a second in that last lap, and has a pretty comfortable breathing space right now between these two, and can afford to make a slight error without losing position.
Yeah, Jobaski got a little bit of room now on Martin Glossman in the number 10 machine in that battle for the 7th position. Ahead of him, it looks as though Mancini's been able to get himself a little bit of breathing space once again over David Shaw. To give you an update up front, as we talked about him enough in this race without really showing too much, Jan Nisolowski is now up the gap between himself and Marco Corti, up to 9.8 seconds in this race. And I talked about at the start of the race how if Corti could stick with him for the first part, Nisolowski has had the habit in this series to burn his tyres up a little bit too much. However, with Corti stuck behind Hadcock for so long in this race, it pretty much meant, being put under pressure from Hadcock, put myself there, it just allowed Nisolowski to drive off into the sunset.
Yeah, sure. There wasn't a Nisolowski that was in trouble in live broadcast in Infineon, or did I mistake it? Did I mix the names?
I think you did get right. Yeah, I know he was involved in some great battles with the likes of David Williams there.
Yeah.
And I see Nisolowski there just having a quick chat as he's working, I believe, his way through a little bit of lap traffic, passing Jose Maria Cesar Olmo, who now goes down a lap in that number 13 machine. So his day is going from bad to worse. However, we have got ourselves less than 5 laps to go here at Brands Hatch. Nisolowski still your race leader, Marco Corti in second, Stuart Adcock in third, Michael Cook in fourth, and Christian Mancini rounding out your top 5, with David Furr in 6th, Robert Jakubowski in 7th, Martin Rossman in 8th, Simon De June in 9th, Martin Ring in 10th. Our time still in this race limited to Luca Zanetti, Antti Rassi, David Shepherd, and now also Martin Asher, who is currently scoring 2 laps down. After qualifying Martin Asher in the 8th position, he's going to be disappointed with what will essentially be a 13th place finish.
And meanwhile, Robert is slightly catching Martin for the battle for the 7th place. Martin is catching Robert. Was it like 13 thousandths of a second in that last lap? But seems much closer than 0.8 of a second this time around. See the gap as those guys cross the line.
And even though these cars haven't got that much top speed, the fact they have so little aero means that once you get into that dirty air, like kind of 5-6 tenths bracket, it does make it very difficult to really keep that car pointing in the right direction, not get too understeer in some of these fast moving corners. And it does look as though these cars get to about that 5-6 tenths second bracket and they just start hitting the dirty air and hitting the brick wall.
Yeah, currently Martin got that gap down from 0.8 to 0.6 of a second. So could be heating up towards the end of the race, but we'll see. But so far this remains the only battle worth watching on the racetrack.
Yeah, Christian Mancini's managed to put himself out now. A 2.4 second gap over David Ford in what was a battle for the final spot in the top 5. Mancini came under pressure from 4 at a couple of points in this race, but it looks as though for the moment he is able to get himself that breathing space now, as we have got ourselves 3 laps to go here at Brands Hatch, this 2.3 mile racetrack. So pretty much less than 7.5 miles left to go for Nisolowski, coming down into Druids now. He's got himself a little bit of lap traffic ahead of him. I believe that's Marcus Ring in the number 14 machine, who's currently sat in the 10th spot. So only 10 cars still remaining on the lead lap. That is showing the speed and the pace of Nisolowski at the moment, as that gap is pretty much now up to 10 seconds between himself and Marco Corti in second.
Yeah, sadly because of the system, we didn't get the chance to see Nisolowski going against Christian Arana. Pretty much in any case, we would have to be extremely lucky with the splits in order to get these two to the same split, but that would be worth watching.
Yeah, and with I believe spectating this race, I've seen a little bit of chatter from him. It will get to a point in the season where we might get to see it happen, but there's been so much talk about the snake split system that I really can't be bothered to go into it again. But it really would be great to see Reinhardt, Nisolowski and the likes of David Williams all on the same racetrack together. So, Nisolowski coming up, it looks as though he's going to try and put that lap down the start-finish straight on Magnus King, who's currently sat in the 10th position in that number 14 machine. Just having a look there, it's King. Not quite sure which way he's going to take into Paddock Kilbeb. Moving to the right-hand side, finally allowing Nisolowski to get past into the braking zone. Nisolowski doing a sterling job there. He's got himself now 2 laps to go. That gap between Robert Pekowski and Martin Glossman was last time at the line 0.2 of a second. Glossman looking very racy there in that battle for the 7th position, and as they are coming out of turn number 8 down into clearways and then the Clark curve, looks like Glossman is getting a lot closer as these drivers have only got 2 laps to settle that battle for the 7th position.
Yeah, Mark Glossman seems to gain time at the latter part of the lap, but especially turn 2, 3, 4, he tends to lose that advantage as he gains, as we see him closing him right up in the turn 1 here.
Oh, yeah, 2 laps to go. That's going to be so disappointing for Robert Jakubowski in that number 9 machine as he allows Glossman there just to go past. And after driving 28 pretty much flawless laps, it looks as though just coming into the corner, I think he was looking to try and defend his position too much, as he didn't really get it loose or anything at all. It just stopped turning on him midway through the corner.
Yeah, it just looks to me like just carried way too much speed through the corner. Didn't catch the apex, and that's the price you have to pay.
So that will relegate him now into the 8th position in this race, which is going to be disappointing for him. He's only got himself a lap and a half to try and regain that spot over Marcus Glossman. Glossman.
He was wide again.
Yeah, he's gone wide, so that pretty much is game over for him. Thankfully, there's a huge gap between himself and Simon Lejeune, currently sat in 9th. So Jakubowski is going to have to settle for 8th position at the end of this race. Meanwhile, we're into the final lap for Jan Nisolowski in that number 2 machine. The gap between himself and Marco Corti up to 11.2 seconds as they came across the line. Stuart Adcock is currently sat in 3rd. He is 16 seconds behind the race leader, but interestingly, he's now being able to pull out a 4-second gap over Michael Cook, who is now your 4th place driver. Christian Mancini is in 5th, David Farr is in 6th, and Marcus Glossman has now moved himself up into 7th. Robert J in 8th, and Sam Lejeune in 9th, with Magnus Ring rounding up your top 10, with 9 cars on the lead lap as we're on the final lap.
Yeah, flawless run for Nisolowski here. Looking at his lap times, all laps within, except 2 laps, he's done the whole race within 0.4 of a second. That's impressive.
It really is impressive. Only, leading this race from the get-go and showing consistency. Leading this race, but the consistency in his lap times and what is a tricky racetrack. Incredible performance there by that number 2 machine, coming out off the Clark curve for the final time, down the front straightaway. Jan Nisolowski wins round number 6 of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series on Glacier TV. Your race winner there by 11.5 seconds, as we're waiting for Marco Corti himself to come across the line. He will come home in the 2nd position. Stuart Adcock close behind in 3rd. He will be satisfied with that after spending a lot of time looking at the rear wing of Marco Corti, then falling back behind Michael Cook after an off-track incident. Christian Mancini is in 5th. David Farr is coming home now. Pretty much, we're just waiting for a couple of drivers to come past the start-finish line, but he pretty much nailed it perfectly there, Yoni. Nisolowski, dominant performance by him, consistent performance by him, and class and field here today.
Yeah, I don't think, even though he would have had someone giving him tons of pressure, I don't think with that consistency he would have had any problems keeping faster and fast guys behind him. That was just like looking at the lap times, being that consistent for 30 laps straight. What else can you say? I mean, He's obviously put a lot of effort getting around this racetrack and getting familiar with the car and the track. And also awesome job.
So, to run through the final results of round 6 of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, Jan Niezolowski, he is your race winner. Just waiting for a couple of drivers to come past pit lane. I believe actually now, there we are, finally Simon June finishing 1 minute 37 seconds behind the race leader, but still in the last lap. He's managed to put it now past start finish line, and I believe he was the last driver to be able to do so. Magnus Ring even, he's just come past start finish line. A couple of these drivers still out on the racetrack. I don't know why Magnus Ring was, because he was scored with 1 lap down, but I think he just decided to do that extra lap anyway. So, your final standings then. Jan Niezolowski, your race winner, 11.980 seconds over Michael Corti as they came across the start finish line. Michael Corti came home in second, Stuart Adcock in third, Michael R. Cook in fourth, with David Farr in fifth. Then Martis Glosserman in the sixth position. Great battle being able to get positions in this race. Robert Jakubowski is in seventh, Simon Lejeune in eighth, Christian Manzini in ninth, Magnus Ring in 10th, Jose Maria says Olmo in 11th, with Wolfgang Wildener in 12th, Martin Asher in 13th, and then your retirements as well is David Shepherd in 14th, Anthony Russell in 15th, and Luca Zanetti in 16th and final position. Final thought, training.
Well, I joined the session with less than 10 laps to go, but looking at the list, I cannot see it going any other way. I mean, Niezolowski clearly dominating the field. Corti with a solid second place. Stuart Adcock third. Clear gaps between the drivers, so basically pretty much expected top 5, top 4 at least, and yeah, those guys just basically finished the race at the same places where they started the race, so that tells enough about the consistency of the guys and the relative gaps between the drivers.
I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise to our viewers for some technical difficulties that caused us to miss, I believe, the first half to 3/4 of a lap. We did our very best, but it's always difficult getting into these races due to the amount of time we have set up. But we are always working on it. We do apologise for it. We will make sure that we don't have the same issue come at round 7, which will be coming to you in just 2 weeks' time. Will Niezolowski be able to assert his dominance once again, Yoni?
Tough to say. I mean, Okayama is a pretty different track compared to Brands Hatch. Not that much elevation changes. It is a pretty slippery track, especially in the stadium area. But yeah, I'd expect the same 2-3 top names maintaining their performances despite it doesn't matter what track they're on. They seem to be just owning this car to taking it to the very limit on every single racetrack they go to. So yeah, I expect Niezolowski, and if Christian Arana decides to run in Okayama, yeah, I'm betting my money on those same top 3 runners than we've seen so far.
We'll be back same time, same place for round 7 of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series on Glacier TV in 2 weeks' time at the Okayama International Circuit. Don't forget, we've got plenty of racing action coming to you this weekend. On Saturday, a packed schedule with the Afterburn IndyCar Series from Phoenix International Raceway. Saturday afternoon in the desert for the Afterburn IndyCar Series, 225 laps. And then the Talk Freak Racing Summer Super Cup coming to you from Suzuka, 90 minutes of the vets and the 4GTs around one of the most beautiful racetracks in the world. And then also the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series, sponsored by Safecraft, will be coming to you from Indianapolis Motor Speedway's road course.
I'm personally looking forward very much, especially that CES Indianapolis. We rarely see slower paced cars around that racetrack. Usually it's only Riley's or F1s, Indy cars, etc. But now we get a chance to see a bit slower cars, which actually is a good thing because those cars are able to maneuver themselves past someone even in the infield part. So that should be a blast.
Oh yeah, definitely. Another great schedule coming up. And let's not also forget, on May the 26th, Glacier Racing will be bringing you the World 600, 400 laps of Charlotte Motor Speedway, with the glorious yellow walls and 24 degrees of banking, as part of our commitment to bring you the entirety of the World Tour for 2012 here on iRacing. That'll be coming to you on Saturday, the 26th of May. Going to be a really, really exciting race. Meanwhile, all it is time to say goodbye from myself, bye from Yoni, and also bye as well from Yana Matakeo. Good night!
Good night.